Hey everyone, and welcome to the GRC Room for Business Equals Racecar, Cyber Equals Brakes. I'm Mike Andrews here once again with Karina Klever of Klever Compliance, and we're happy to welcome viLogics CRO Wil Klusovsky today. Please
Hey,
feel free
everybody.
to leave comments and we'll get to them as soon as possible. If it's not while we're live, it'll be shortly after. Also, if you haven't already, please check out the GRC Room YouTube channel and consider subscribing. On there, you'll be able to find this webinar, all our other ones, clips, and more. So, looks like we're ready to go. Let me pass to Karina for a brief introduction, then we'll learn more about Wil.
Thank you, Mike. Well, we're so happy to have you. Thank you. I'm Karina Klever of Klever Compliance, and we are a compliance management as a service provider. We provide compliance and GRC program services for those who don't want to or can't afford an FTE or can't find an FTE for their business. We're tool and industry agnostic and maturity agnostic as well. Excuse me. So, Wil, you have the first question here. So, you have had such a wide variety of roles. How has this shaped your perspective on cybersecurity today?
Yeah, it's I think 26 years in the industry, 15 or 17, somewhere more than half has been in consulting and managed security. And I jokingly say, oh, it's pretty accurate. I've pretty much had every job that exists within those organizations aside from like HR and finance. Uh, so built and led teams in pretty much all those domains. And even starting out early, I think what it does is it made me realize that cybersecurity and IT in general, we're just part of a business. Whether it is the business I'm in or the business my clients are in or whatever, there's a business to run, and understanding that perspective and understanding where you fit into it, which actually leads into the whole race car analogy where it all kind of came from, is that idea that we're just one little element in the bigger thing that's going on, and we're not the most important thing either. Oh, Mike, you're on mute. I get to say it.
Just wanted to test that. All systems go. So, I started out in telecom and then moved into IT and cybersecurity, and definitely helps you see the full picture. And to William Rochelle, who said this is about cybersecurity. Yes, we're back into cybersecurity now. Um, yeah, but no, thanks, Wil, for joining us today. For your current role, you're actually a chief revenue officer by title, anyway. You know, that can mean a lot of things. What's the most challenging part of your current role?
Yeah. Well, the most challenging part is finding leads, which has nothing to do with cybersecurity, but that is, again, kind of having worked through all these different areas now. There's a lot that blankets under that, right? There's everything in marketing and sales that kind of feeds into that. But the reality is probably the most challenging part is exactly the way that I take content and conversations and problem solving to the market, which is education. Um, it's it's very nuanced to educate a buyer or a client or a prospect on the fact that they need a vulnerability management program and not a vulnerability scanning tool without sounding like you're upselling. So there's a lot of my job that is leaked into, well, we're doing content and conversations and engagement with the high level. This is what vulnerability, as an example, this is what vulnerability management is, and that's the top of the funnel stuff. Then the middle of the funnel, here's how you build that program, and the bottom of the funnel, how you tactically do it. And you need to hit on all those elements so that your clients or buyers or whoever comes in educated, ideally before, instead of having them show up and say they want to buy one thing and you go, no, 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 you don't, because you don't want to sound like the sales guy trying to upsell them a car. I just want to make sure the client gets the right solution, and a lot of times they just don't have that knowledge, and so that's probably the biggest nuance to the role.
Yeah, that could be a hard one, whether you're on the sales side or the cybersecurity side, because some companies that have nothing, and then you say, oh, well, you should have a strategy or a program, and they're like, oh, okay, I'll go buy this tool, and then when they have a tool, they'll talk to someone else, and they're like, a tool's not a strategy, that's not a program. So we're always bouncing them back and forth, and it could be hard to one figure out what they need, and then also make it show them that the progress is good. One tool may not be everything, but it's better than nothing. It's helpful.
So we call this problem toolard, right? We walk into companies and they just have stacks and stacks and stacks and stacks of tools. They're not looking at them, but they go to RSA and they go to Black Hat and they're like, we need another tool. And it's like, wait a minute, do you really? Let's stop for a minute and just step back, look at the duplicative functionality, look at the licensing costs that you have, look at you're creating swivel chair operations for your people and it's burning them out, right? Because you're expecting very myopic skill sets to manage each and every single one. And there's really no good pulse on the holistic GRC program, which is kind of intentionally always been kind of meant to be this Uber dashboard across your entire company, right? And so meanwhile, you're replacing it with these myopic little bits and pieces across your company, and it's just causing so much pain and confusion. You walk into a company and it's like, okay, well, what is your priority from a regulatory and framework perspective? And they're like, well, here's the GRC tool that we use. I don't care, right? I mean, I don't care what tool you're using. You can manage your GRC on a napkin. I mean, I wouldn't recommend it, but I mean, it's really something that it is so consumed our industry that we don't see solutions outside of a tool solution, and it's just really causing more harm than good at this point.
Yeah, I've literally asked CEOs, trying to start conversations, what they do for cybersecurity, and I've had them answer, oh, we have insert GRC tool here, and like full stop, end of they're like, yeah, that's good, that's all we need. Baffling.
Yeah, and that's kind of the danger of checkbox compliance, right? Because you're not thinking about, I mean, look, frameworks are built to be ethereal and nebulous and vague by design because they need to be broadly applicable, because you got to sell the classes and you got to sell the certifications and you got to sell the books, right? So they go all the way across the board. But now these checkboxes become your Bible. And then when it's marked green, you think you're done, and you don't even see the real all of the aspects of your security program like you should because of those checkboxes. It's a very slippery slope for a lot of people.
Yeah, oh, good exchange. So those were a couple questions for Will. Now we're gonna have some questions where we bounce it back and forth between Will and Karina. Keep it going. So Will, the first one's for you. We got this topic by looking at the topics you speak about, and this was one of the more exciting ones. So here we are today, and this is related to that. Where do organizations struggle most as they try to balance growth and cybersecurity? Which is where we get the race car and the brakes concept from.
I think kind of what Karina just said, it's assumptions. Going in and assume, I've heard we're good. No, and I get it. You don't want to be pitched to. That's fine. So maybe you're not good. You just don't want to admit it. But a lot of times you do think you're good. They have, insert endpoint tool here. And a lot of those out of the box aren't that great. Like Microsoft has its own scoring, and out of the box, it's like, a 30 out of 100 before you tweak it. And most of them are like, oh, I've turned it on. And so just thinking that, or because they're paying somebody, whether it's an IT team or they have a couple of security people or they have an MSP or an MSSP. I actually did we were talking about this in the green room. I just did a huge article on the difference between MSP, MSSP, MDR, and all of these things, or how do you evaluate those people? And it wasn't, in this case, it's kind of going back to the assumptions. One is a little bit of education so you know what you're buying, but also, do you know what you're buying? Like, where does the line get drawn? When something happens, who's going to react to it? Because dealing with an incident, that's not the time you want to find out that, oh, I'm responsible for this part of the response or this part of the containment. And a lot of people in all my decades of doing managed services, the sales guy will promise one thing, the CISO will assume another, and the contract says a third thing. So sitting down and having this, so I think just being able to eliminate those assumptions that you have is the thing I think most that will help you balance out that.
Yeah. Well said. Karina, what do you think about this?
So I kind of toggle between the very practical side of, we assume the tool's going to do everything and there's no charter from above to do an inventory, right? I mean, like from a tactical perspective, the APIs we're all using for our AIs through our vendors, I personally know of many companies who have been breached because the bad guy got in through the API connection and nobody knows how to control that API, has a ledger of that API. So I think tactically, we still have to know our environment and not relinquish that responsibility to the subscription we pay for every month, because it's not always accurate and it doesn't always see everything that it needs to see, right, for you to make the right decision. I think strategically, from a leadership perspective, what's really important for leaders is to demand a holistic approach to a balance between good program, good workflows defined, good tool suites that's strong but not redundant and not duplicative, and knowing your data. Like, we don't know what data we have. We haven't classified our data. We don't know what data we're sending to whom, where it's stored. I mean, look at Azure this week, right? People are thinking, oh, Azure is the way to go. It got hacked. Azure goes and rents out data centers, colos, just like everybody else. And what are the controls downstream? So your vendor management program is probably one of your riskiest at this point, because unless you have a really good handle on how you're assessing your incoming vendors, managing your current vendors, knowing what the failure and success points are, you might be putting yourself at risk. Ask where your data is.
Yeah. I think a lot of this comes down to misconceptions that lead companies, especially smaller ones, to think that cybersecurity is all or nothing. A couple years back, was at a startup event here in Vegas. There's a ton of them. I go to a lot of them. The presenter was giving kind of like a broad presentation, and then mentioned cybersecurity, and then right away, this guy's hand goes up in the audience. He goes, "Yeah, I'm sorry, I got to push back on that one." He goes, "A lot of the companies in this room shouldn't even be thinking about cybersecurity until they hit $1 million in revenue." And I'm like,
What?
I know for a fact there's some fintech companies in this room. I know him. Yeah, he should be thinking about PCI DSS now. And
Right.
I've seen that million examples of that, but it's a real problem.
Yeah.
The smaller businesses are the ones that can go away really quick if they don't do anything.
It's 60%. It's literally, the statistic is 60% of small businesses who experience a hack, or if we're, some sort of a ransomware, go out of business. It's tragic.
Yeah. So there are a lot of risks that come when that happens, Karina. What risks do businesses accept when they prioritize speed without the right controls in place?
I don't think that they acknowledge the acceptance of any risk because there's usually not anyone who says, hey, if you do this, here's the risk you accept. Do you really want to go in on that? And if you have a very simplistic conversation with a decision maker and you lay it out in a simple way that they can understand, most of the time they'll step back and say, wait a minute, what? Really? This could happen? Well, how do we avoid that? What should I do? So the problem is, we call it risk management, but very few actual risks on a risk ledger are associated to failed controls that we have in our environment, because the controls we have in our environment aren't actually mapped to our organizations. Remember, they're mapped to some ethereal framework out in the sky that really might not have anything to do with your actual operations. And so the risk that's accepted, quote unquote, is usually not willfully accepted. It's by default accepted because no one steps up and says, hey, wait a minute, let's really go through this and let's really understand this, so that they can make an informed decision. Usually it's, I stick my head in the sand and hope it goes away. Just like how many years ago, 30 years ago, GRC was like, look, if we don't write a policy and the auditors come in, they can't catch us on anything. Right? So, and it's the same kind of thing that's happening right now. It's just a different topic. Not much has changed.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting. If you're a risk practitioner and you hear the word accept, you're thinking of risk treatment. Like the best one is avoid. Then you have mitigate, transfer, and accept. But really, if a business leader in general, it's like when you don't do something, you're accepting it, but it's in a different way. You're just not doing anything about it. It's more like maybe ignoring. Will, what do you think about this one?
My answer is actually similar. I call this shadow risk acceptance. And that is the fact that you asked, what are they accepting by not having, when they're prioritizing speed over the controls. And it's the fact that basically everything on the table. You're accepting everything you don't know about. And unless somebody does bring all of that to your attention, and I coach this a lot, as the security leader, as the person who owns it, whatever your title or role is in that organization, your job is to understand where all those vulnerabilities could exist, what that potential impact could be, and to tell the business leadership, hey, I get it, you're not going to do this, but here's all the things that could happen and the likelihood that they could happen and the potential impact they could have. Please sign here. Because us as security practitioners, it's not our job to make the decision to accept, transfer, mitigate. We make a recommendation, but the business owns that decision. They own the budget. So they can absolutely, they have to weigh that. Do I spend this money here or do I not? So I think it is a lot of it on there. And doing that, you need to have that asset inventory, that visibility, that business impact analysis, because you can't go to the business and say, well, this is really important. Well, how important is it? How do I know that? Until the business has already bought in and said, oh no, we know these 5 systems are critical and they're tied to these 10 processes and these 15 people. And because all of that fits in here, one of these things breaks, then all of this breaks, and now X amount of dollars per minute, goes away.
Yeah. So it's pretty commonly known that a lot of businesses take a reactive approach to cybersecurity instead. We hear a lot about incident response. What's the real reason, Will, that so many organizations take a reactive approach? There's one thing that we might say on a webinar, but what's the real reason it happens?
In my experience, it's the whoever, whether it's still being viewed as an IT issue or a technical problem. It's that business translation I just talked about isn't happening. Now that could be the business itself, the board, the CEO, the executive leadership team not seeing it that way. It could be the cyber leadership or the cyber team not presenting it that way. Either way, it's usually because they're just seeing cybersecurity as a technical thing, and they're not thinking about it in terms of downtime or operational output or client impact or client advantage, ways to win better deals. They're still thinking, to go back to the race car analogy, they're not at the stage where they see cybersecurity as the brakes, the harness, the roll cage. They still see it as some necessary evil they have to do, and they want to do as very little as possible to check the box and get rid of it. And that's generally what I've seen to that, creating that reactive approach.
Yeah.
I always like the way that the company says, oh, we need cyber insurance, and the agent sends a questionnaire. The contact at the company receives the questionnaire, hands it to the IT guy, and says, make sure all of this says yes. And then the guy filling it out marks everything yes. And then when a tragedy does happen, all of a sudden there's no coverage because you basically weren't completely forthright on your questionnaire, right? So, even preparation like that takes some effort and will show you that you are not as covered according to checkbox compliance as you thought you were, right? So most people want to go to market, and actually, Bruce, thank you for joining. Great segue into this, right? So Bruce mentioned, we've got layers and layers of vendors like an onion, right? We've got 1 out of 12 things that you might need. Well, it's easy to build a tool for that one thing. It's easy to push it, right? It's easy to have a marketing spin on it and convince people to get a subscription and go to Black Hat and you have funding and go get a booth and convince everybody that you need this thing. But this is where Toolard comes in, right? You're again not looking at the holistic GRC program at your company aligned to your maturity, your operations, your regulatory requirements. Contractual requirements have fallen off the map somehow in the entire GRC space. We've got some good TPRM solutions out there, but at what point do you walk up to legal and say, hey, I want to see that contract. I want to see when it terms. I want to know what the SLAs are. I want to understand our data transfer requirements. And can we even push back and say, do you really need all of this data from us about our employees, as an example, right? So, they're prioritizing that recovery when something goes wrong, of course, instead of being proactive about it, which to me is unfortunate, which is what I think kind of like that's why companies like Mike's exist, like Will's exist, like mine exist, is we have enough of the knowledge to bring companies guidance on, hey, let's not get to where we have that 3-alarm fire. Let's do some basic things that you're fully capable of doing. It's just you might not know about it. Let's do it in a smart way, and let's figure out how to stack the odds in your favor.
On the insurance front, I like to remind people that that's nice. You might get some money back, but that's not going to recover your systems any faster or at all. You're still going to be stuck dealing with the incident.
Yeah.
Yeah. Years back when I was trying all sorts of business development tactics, one of them was to go to the cyber insurance companies. Had this great idea, like, hey, let's partner up. I'll help these companies be more accurate when they submit their questionnaires to you. They wanted to kill me if they spoke to me at all. They're like, no, that is not what we want. We want. And then I was asking some people, like, why are they reacting like that? And it's like, they want those questionnaires that all say yes. So then they can sell the policy, maybe collect money for 6 years before they even have to have that conversation. Like, oh, we can't pay you, sorry, but
now they're all going out of. Now they're all realized they paid more because they had no idea how to actually scope it.
Yeah,
100%.
Yeah. So Will, you've worked with a lot of companies over the years. What typically motivates organizations to take a more proactive approach?
A breach. I mean, no, I'm joking, but like you can look at the IBM cost of a data breach report. Like most companies spend money on monitoring incident response right after a breach, but less, facetiously, growth, the actual growth that we're talking about, the race car that wants to go fast, and that's winning the race. You want to grow. Getting a new contract, that medium-sized business that now has that enterprise client in pharmaceuticals just sent you 3 pages of 8-point font cybersecurity requirements that you have to go. And you've been going, we've got an IT person, we're good. And now all of a sudden you need a SOC and a TPRM and you need IR exercises every quarter. M&A, that's another one. You're getting funding or looking to buy, or you're getting investment, PE backing. Like anytime there's money involved in that significant kind of growth. And then the last part I probably see a lot is the headlines, the news, top of mind, right? I think that's the biggest thing, is something has to happen to trigger the business executives, the non-technical people, to think, oh wait, are we doing this, right? Are we do I need to question if you look at a lot of my hooks, I try to do that in my content on LinkedIn. The goal is to make a business leader look at that and think, well, am I doing that or not? Do I need to read this or do I need to scroll past? So I think having something top of mind is really what drives that, along with, money. It's tied to revenue. Man.
Yeah. What do you think, Karina?
So I find it really interesting that we talk about proactive, which really to me is basic hygiene, basic running an operation within IT, basic controls, basic GRC, right? Where I literally have 2 pages worth of verified breaches in the pharmaceutical space that I presented for a client. We're getting ready for that next week. In the multi-million ranges, where disclosed, most of the time it isn't disclosed. The unfortunate thing, we're becoming very numb to it, right? I mean, if you look at HHS OCR and the breaches that are listed there, so criteria is the company has to abide by HIPAA, they have to have lost or been breached of more than 500 individuals PHI, and the listing only includes active investigations, which means if a breach happened 7 years ago, took them 2 years to do the investigation, it was closed 5 years ago, it's not going to appear on this list. There are over 320 million people on this list. That's over 90% of the population. And as consumers, we're unfortunately like, oh, I got another breach notification in the mail, whatever, right? And so we're, as consumers, bad on us, but worse for those companies who many times try to do the right thing, many times have checkbox compliance solutions, many times have that insurance policy, and many times have great attorneys who say, this isn't material. I'm not even going to disclose this, right? So basically, we have just this compounding, lackadaisical approach, and to all of our tools. It's getting worse. We have more and more tools. Why is this not getting better? Which is the claim, right? So again, back to GRC principles is really the thing to do for proactive / good old housekeeping that you should be doing anyway. And yes, those breaches are very, very useful for executive leaders. Comes down to just a few basics. Most of the time, vendor management, access controls, right? I mean, you're looking at some of the very core basics, vulnerability management, which exist in every regulation and every framework. So I always recommend focusing on those.
Yeah. Well said. You know, it's when you're starting a business like one of ours, you might think, oh, maybe all businesses need cybersecurity help. Oh, it's not all of them. Oh, maybe we should focus on these businesses. But what I've learned is businesses aren't going to do anything until they personally feel it. Like Will said, for one of those reasons Will mentioned, maybe they had a breach, maybe they had a close call, maybe they heard something in the news. Lately, it's the vendor management stuff. But the good news about this is once they have that first scare, once they almost lose or do lose that $250,000, $500,000 deal, and they get it right, it's scalable. So of course you should be calculating the ROI of these projects, but the ROI that's harder to account for, but in a good way, is the fact that once you fix it once, you can just keep doing that as you're scaling your business and close more deals, and before you know it, it goes from being a fight to close a deal to, wow, looks like you guys really thought about this before. It's like, oh yeah, I guess we have. So getting into the next question here, Will, as a CRO, you're helping companies figure this out. How can companies make smarter cybersecurity investments instead of just adding more tools, which Karina finally refers to as tool lard?
I've in all of my years doing this kind of stuff, I don't think I've ever had a conversation where I didn't say the words asset management and asset visibility. Business impact analysis, data flow diagrams, risk appetite. You have to, what is the business trying to do? What's the most important things to them, and what do they actually have, right? And then, how much risk are they willing to accept? That program, it baffles me. Like, people want to get to the doing. They don't like paying for assessments or plans or PowerPoints or roadmaps. They want to just buy the tech and put it in. Like, but that's wrong. Like, that's just absolutely wrong, right? Take that time in that planning phase, understand what actually matters to your business, and your budget will be predictable year over year. You'll have a roadmap for 12, 24 months. You won't be fighting fires and having to find budget to fix this thing because we just put these tools in and ignored those. We didn't know we needed them, or we protected this system that wasn't actually that important, and this one got breached because we didn't bother to put context under our vulnerability management, blah, 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 blah. That take the time to build and understand what the business is actually trying to achieve and what they actually have to protect.
Yeah. Karina, how are you helping companies make smarter cybersecurity investments?
It's usually not about a tool because they usually have a bunch of tools, right? So now, sometimes there is a very clear need for a tool because they have 78 of these, but they don't have not one of these over here that they really actually need. So in that case, we do a full RFP, RFQ, RFI. But what that forces people to do is sit down and think about their actual requirements, which they have no idea what they are. Because usually the product page of the tool you're getting tells you what you get. And like 4 of these things look good out of the list of 52. So you got to get it, right? Meaning you have dead weight functionality that's sitting there and you're paying for stuff you're never ever going to use. Or you may want to use one day, but maybe we'll mature to it, right? So it's conversations like this. So forcing a full requirements session and an open RFP, RFI, RFQ, and even if not traditional open as in like, military contracts, but like, hey, let's go sit down and look at these 10 sites and see if they answer some of our very basic requirements. Most of the time they don't, right? We just did an exercise like this for HIPAA AI, right? We found a lot of companies that were claiming to be we're approved by HIPAA AI. Like, I don't even know what the hell that is, right? So it's like, okay, let's go down this path. We had a requirement. We were working with a medical institution, so let's figure out what that really means. I don't. I still haven't figured out what that means, and I don't know how someone can make that claim. However, to an untrained eye that's in the medical field, oh, I want to use AI. Now I got stars in my eyes because look, it says they're HIPAA AI. I must be okay to buy this tool. And it's kind of it's kind of unfair. It's kind of like hire somebody before you make these huge decisions that impact your company, impact your operations, and give you peace of mind to make sure that you're really secure in the way that you're assuming you are. Just because the website says so, I can say whatever the hell I want to on my website. Doesn't mean it's true, right? So, I mean, and this is another problem with AI. 30 years ago, I started my career in 1989, in April of 1989. I was a AS400 programmer. So back in the day, operator and a programmer. I remember when the internet started and we were so infatuated and we were so enamored and it was so authoritarian and it was such this magical, mystical thing. Like you didn't have to go to the library or wait for Bobby down the street with the encyclopedias to come back from vacation. It was just this life altering thing, right? And we figured out within a few months that not everything on the internet is true. But AI now takes all of that data and magnifies it by millions and millions of percents. And so now you have to also just use good judgment when you consume information. And we have a blind faith with a lot of business leaders who just want it done, who just want the solution. They've got other things to worry about, and they're really not taking that accountability. So I think stressing that is very, very important. Proactively instead of putting more tools in the environment.
And I'd say there's responsibility on us in the cybersecurity community, not that is our job. The business has business to do. Let them go
Sure.
do that. But we need to bring them the right information so that, again, you're signing off on this risk. Here you go. Here's the risks. Put your name on the paper because it's not my responsibility.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah, a great exchange once again. So, Will, we're a little ahead on time. So, if you could expand on this one, because this next question, you could probably talk for 2 hours about this one alone. So, and if you want to even throw an example in there of something you've done recently or how you would approach it for the type of company that might be on the call. Mm-hmm. Here's the question. What does a proactive cybersecurity program look like in practice?
Nice. Yeah, I've actually done like workshops around like how to build these and like got, here's 25 pages you can take home and do it yourself kind of thing. The first, going back to what we just talked about, having that asset management, that visibility, understanding the business impact, that's how you're going to make decisions about everything. So what happened, that knowledge is now going to mathematically make it easier for you to help the business make the right decision. This system is important. It comprises of these elements and these processes. It makes us X amount of money per minute, or it serves our constituents in this area. It's valuable at this level. These are the vulnerabilities around it. This is the potential risk. This is the potential cost of the bad things happening. We can spend money to fix it. A, B, and C. Here's spend a lot and fix it so it almost never happens. Let's spend a little bit and we're okay with 50-50, or let's find another solution or just do the bare minimum, right? It makes these tool and process conversations easier. And I do say tool and process because I agree with Karina. They don't always need another tool, but if you are missing that tool that does the thing, then you need to fill that gap. But you have to understand implementing a tool means you need people to manage it. It needs to be part of another program. How is it going to feed into the rest of your cybersecurity program, right? How does your new DLP tool help the SOC? How does it help legal? How does it help the GRC team? Where does it feed into the contracts process? Where does it feed into, all of these other areas? So by understanding that, it's not just, this tool costs X amount of dollars to protect it. So again, going back and presenting that, having a predictable budget. Like that's what this all comes down to from a cybersecurity leadership. That's the shift that we take, going from the technical, I need this thing because the vendor came in and he showed me the shiny thing and I think that's great. Well, no, you don't want that conversation. You want the conversation to be like, here's the risks we have, here's the potential impact to the business, and this is how we solve it. And then what happens is that happens on a continual basis. New things are going to happen. There were not AI security tools a couple years ago, right? So you probably, a good organization that had a 24-month roadmap, once all of these tools came back, had to go back and revisit that. That's a really hard thing to do when you have no context for the decisions you've made before. So, again, having that foundation, now you have predictable outcomes and you have a roadmap that you can manage. The other aspects feeding specifically into things like GRC, if you're a healthcare organization, you know when HIPAA is changing. If you've got PCI requirements, you know when the new DSS is coming out and what are we going to have to do or what are we going to have to assess to. Oh, SEC regulations just changed. Sarbanes-Oxley, whatever, pick your framework. These new things are happening. If you're being reactive to it, then you're scrambling around instead of having a program manager who's sitting there going, in 8 months we know that this new rule is going to come down or this new law, or we're going to have to appoint somebody to the board that's going to have cybersecurity, blah blah blah. Okay, cool, we can plan for that. Now the CFO is not mad that you're coming asking him for hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars because there's a fire to put out, right? So the last part I'll say to this, because you give me a little room to expand, is for cybersecurity, that means knowing what the business is doing and not just, oh, our goal is to be the top fintech company on the East Coast or whatever, but what HR is doing every day. You know what projects they have and they're working on. You know what finance is doing. Whatever departments, the product side of the company, the services side of the company, you're plugged into all of that because you've got time to do that. And that's how you're going to feed your program, because your program needs their buy-in as much as everybody else's, right? So the eagle to eagle, C to C, like level relationship has to be there. Everybody's on the same team supporting the greater business goal. And that really comes down to something I like to say a lot, which is at the end of the day, it's still just about people. So.
Yeah. A lot of good info in there. Karina, how would you answer this one?
So I want to reiterate data classification really quickly. I encourage companies to know the type of data they need for the purposefulness of their operations and minimally keep as the data that you need to do your basic operation. So data classification governs access management from a human, a system to system, and a physical perspective. Least privilege, need to know, segregation of duties comes into play here, right? It rules vendor management because I really care about the vendor that has all of my most important data. And I really don't care much about the guy who stocks coffee cups in the pantry room. I just don't. Is it a contract? Sure. But I need to have 4 tiers. That's what we've found works best to do vendor management, classification, and association to that level of risk. Next thing you need, incident management. How quickly am I going to recover which piece of information when it goes down? Not all data is the same. Again, data handling. So when we talk about retention, why are you holding on to publicly available data forever? Like legit, why? I mean, this is the equivalent of taking the onesie that you were using when you were 3 months old and making sure it stays in the closet. Like, do you really need it? Like, really, would you ever use it again? The problem is the bigger your data set gets, the more enticing you are. And all of my hacking friends, they're like, well, it takes me 5 minutes to hack in. I'd really take the same 5 minutes to hack into a big data set instead of a little one. I don't care about that one. So minimize your scope of what is and what might be enticing to people, right? Destroying data. Public information does not need to be destroyed the same way as very, very important data, right? And I'm remembering how many years ago was somebody hired, I forgot who it was. It was a major company. They did a laptop refresh, and they took all of the old laptops that were out of warranty and threw them in a dumpster in the loading dock at the bottom of the skyscraper. And somebody came in and just took all of the laptops, hacked into everything, was all of the confidential information about the company. It was a very, very well-known, very publicized hack. So if it's important data, destroy it a little bit more carefully than you would just good old public data right over that, right? Encryption. Why are you encrypting publicly available data? Are you serious? Why are you spending money on this? Not only why are you storing it, but why are you throwing away money? This is just ridiculous. If it's publicly available, get rid of it. Lower your footprint, just your digital footprint, and be liable for only the most important stuff, and put the right controls around that. Risk management, business impact, financial impact, of course. Change management. Have a longer approval cycle for the most important data and the most important functionality in your, and don't forget to put your AI functionality into change management, especially if it touches anything production related. DRBCP, right? So just what kind of data are you needing to recover, and what's the most important that you have to have for your operations? And you might need to make a decision of what is not that important, right? And I'm remembering the wildfires here in LA, beginning of last year, on the phone with a technician who calls me frantically. What's a frequently? This document says I have to do this frequently. Can I do this next week? Like, I don't know if my house is burning. I don't know where my wife is, and I don't know where my 2 kids are. What do I have to do this right now? So you can choose to make your people successful in the roles where they need to make decisions in critical situations by giving them instructions and drilling through those instructions, so that when it comes to time to an emergency, they actually know what to do and they're good. They're not worried about it, and they're not second guessing themselves and playing games with words like frequently, occasionally, sometimes, periodically. Just keep it simple. If it's 5 minutes, just say 5 minutes. If it's next week, just say on Tuesdays, right? I mean, don't make it more complicated, because you're introducing subjectivity in a place where there shouldn't be any, because you're in an emergency situation. Then the last one, I'm going to talk about AI adoption. We all want AI. Absolutely. It's like the best and latest and greatest of everything. Sure. If you don't have your workflow defined, if you don't have your data defined, if you're unable to actually execute and operationally step through what you want to automate, it's garbage in, garbage out, folks, right? I mean, that's been a term that's been around for decades. You have the choice to actually, the automation makes bad processes worse and good processes better. So when you hear about AI solutionizing a whole bunch of miraculous things, it's probably because of the baseline workflow and the baseline data was good. And if you want to take the time to actually figure that out and map it out, then yeah, you're going to have a great AI experience. AI currently has in the 90% failure rate, right? When it comes to operational application at companies. And who do they call? The folks that sit down, look at the data, understand the workflow, understand the metrics, the success criteria, the roles involved, and they very carefully structure out something that can be automated. It's not flip a switch, folks. Right? So that's my that's my very, very long answer to your super short question, Mike.
The AI thing, every time I have had somebody ask me, we want to do AI, I'm like, go find your processes first, make sure they work, find the parts of the job that suck, and take that out. Don't build new stuff. And on the data stuff, I tell everybody who has struggles with this, go to legal. They will be your best friend in getting data cleaned up. Ask them how much of that data they want available when they have to do an e-discovery for an investigation. They don't want anything they don't have to have for multiple reasons, right? And they'll also be, heavily partnered with you on things like data classification and cleaning all that stuff up, because it is a mess. There's going to be a fallout. I don't know what it's going to be, but at some point, this giant ball of unstructured data we live in is going to collapse.
I saw a post the other day. I had to watch it a few times. This young lady is a technician, and I don't know her name. It was one of those things that just flew right by me. She says, well, I work for an attorney's office, and we went through this whole AI council, and we wrote this whole AI policy, and we did all of these infrastructure improvements, and we have certain AI that is approved for certain parts of our job. This is a law office, right? We have to do. And so we give it some time, and we're seeing very low volume after all of this work where we structured this whole solution for them. And we're walking around from one attorney to the other, and they're like, oh yeah, I'm putting all my contracts into AI, into Claude. So you told me I can use AI, right? Which of course has no boundaries, right? I mean, you have no idea where this proprietary data is going. So even the layman will hear AI and be like, oh, well, that must mean Claude. I see this AI policy. I'm not going to actually read it, but I'm just going to like start plugging stuff into AI. So and to me, AI means Claude. To me, AI means chat, right? To me, AI means whatever. And I'm just good because I saw some policy fly by me. So it must be okay to use. And so and she like started crying in this post. And I'm like, my heart went out to her because it's like, she's like, we're preparing and doing all of the right things. But the user base is like, well, we're going to use what we're going to use anyway.
The critical part about the people, OCM, when you create a policy, that policy is created. It is not implemented until you train them.
Exactly.
Here's what AI is. Here's how to use AI. Here's how you're allowed to use AI at work.
Bingo. Yeah, absolutely right.
Something really interesting happened here in the way you both answered that question. And I had a feeling it would. That's why I was taking notes here. I don't usually take hardly any notes. I wanted to look for the trends in what you were saying. And Will started by talking about data classification, asset management, changing regulations, knowing what's going on in the company so you're not left in the dark. Very practical stuff. And then Karina picked up with data sanitization and destruction. She gave the example, I think it's from Morgan Stanley, of their contractor throwing thousands of computers in the garbage. Happened, really did. Then she mentioned change management, disaster recovery, business continuity, and then got into AI management. So someone might be thinking that's like unrelated, like, oh, okay, there's the normal cybersecurity stuff. Then we have AI management. But the big key there is that all those things that you both mentioned before AI management make AI management happen.
Right.
It's not
like we've done this before, Mike.
It's just the basics of GRC, and they apply to AI like they apply to any other tool.
Yep.
AI, people forget AI is like, it's smart, but it's software, smarter software. Robotics will be physical. There's still like software in there and stuff like that. So that was cool. So Will, how can cybersecurity actually enable businesses to grow faster and with more confidence?
The confidence term is the thing that scares me, because I think too many organizations are confident today with what they have, and it's probably not that great, or ignoring it, right? Especially in organizations that are moving fast. Like they think, oh, we got a SOC 2, we're secure now, because that's what we needed to do to get on this contract. And I'm like, no, that's not what it means, right? And you could, like, big red flag if somebody says we're SOC 2 compliant. Okay, that organization needs to be heavily, heavily investigated if you're going to do business with them. But the point being, like, people I think are pretty confident in moving. So what I do see, again, they think they have EDR in place, so they've got this, they've done a little bit of stuff, or the IT person has it handled, right? But you need to have a way to demonstrate your cybersecurity. So a lot of stuff Karina was talking about with third-party risk management, that's very critical, right? Understanding that the people you're going to do business with are going to ask to see and all that. And if you're trying to win a big contract or an important contract where you're getting data from somebody, or you're going to get access into the organization, I mean, 2013 Target will never not stop telling the story about an HVAC company that, basically caused one of the biggest breaches in retail knowledge, right? They didn't understand they didn't have that attack path. They didn't have that context. That HVAC company got picked on its own merits for whatever reason. but wasn't clearly evaluated from access controls, or maybe something was screwed up, or but going back to those things I said about you winning that new deal. So, and I have seen organizations, because they are compliant with certain regulations, or because they are certified to work in certain industries. I had a client in the past who, because of their security posture, was able to, hold all their other vendors accountable to that as well, because they needed to for the contracts they had, because they had really big contracts. And if those other companies were like, well, we don't really want to do that, that's too much work, then they would say, fine, we're just going to buy you, because that's how good we are, because we're all in on this, and this is working, we're winning a lot of business because of it. We need you. If you're not going to make our widget or do our thing for you, then we'll just buy you and integrate you into it. So that viewpoint, I think, is one. The other is having cyber built in, not as an afterthought. So think about assembling the race car. When the engineers are sitting down there designing everything, the brakes are part of the downforce equation, and the roll cage is part of the impact equations, and the wind, all of this stuff that they're thinking about when they build the vehicle is all at once. They're not going out and being like, oh, this is a cool body, this is a cool engine, let's put it in. Oh, I need some brakes now. Let's just slap some on there. Because and that's kind of what cybersecurity has become. So I think when you do that, then you build an organization that helps move with the business, allows the business to move faster, because you can push code. You can push code and iterate fast all you want, with or without security. When you do it without security, you're likely introducing new risk, and now you're fighting that fire again. So in this case, well, let's do it the right way. Take an extra, couple of minutes, days, whatever it takes to get the thing done, or do it right. And now we can push things out securely. We can do a new product update securely. We can do a new service offering with security in mind. And then the business grows with security instead of against it.
Yeah. I think one of the things that I see really missing is all of the other departments, right? So, I mean, the CTO, who may have the CISO reporting to them, which kind of in itself is a sketch situation, right? But okay, that's kind of where it's born, because it's kind of got a lot of buttons and widgets and tools, and so, well, that stuff belongs in IT, right? So they kind of stick the security piece into IT, but cybersecurity does not equal governance, right? And does not equal GRC as a whole practice, right? So a situation that I'm remembering, I posed the question, do we suspend access for people who go on LOA? Karina broke her foot and I'm out for 6 weeks. And to avoid me coming back at the end of my disability and saying, hey, I checked email every day and I'm salaried, so I want you to pay me back pay. And actually, employees are winning this fight because the company doesn't have enough paperwork in place to avoid that lawsuit, right? So the question is just, and so the CTO says to me, oh yeah, I'd love to do that, but I would hate to ask that of the CHRO. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I go to the CHRO. Hey, CHRO, do you think that you could send a notification to IT telling them that Karina went out on disability? And he says, well, yeah, but God, the IT guys, they just have so much work. I'd hate to have them have more work because of me. So I go back to the CTO. No, this lasts for 4 weeks, back and forth, until I'm physically in person. And I get the both of them in the room at one table. The answer was decided on in 5 minutes. All of the workflow was decided on in 5 minutes. Who is doing what, when, to whom, and what are the triggers? 5 minutes. But meanwhile, we've made this one very simple decision, this very large point, the hole, it's a gap because of assumptions that people have in their own head. The CHRO has assumptions, the CTO has assumptions, and I see this in organizations everywhere. HR does not track or create triggers for contractors in most companies. I myself have been a contractor where half a year later, I call back the CTO and go, dude, I still have access. Oh, I forgot to sign the offboarding form. So these are manual triggers so HR does good for the employees, right? But it's the contractor you kind of want to be worried about, because they may have more privileged access than Joe Schmo, in wherever department. So, I mean, so some of these basic controls really require other departments. And right now, we're unfortunately looking at GRC in a very myopic, centralized, kind of targeted area, just only into IT. And I think it's just incredibly detrimental, because it involves finance, it involves legal, it involves HR, it involves procurement, it involves all of these departments. But as leaders, we've all been taught to isolate, create the workflow in a silo so that you can manage it better, you can control it a little bit better, and have it not be so sprawled out, duplication, redundancies, all of these things. And really, this is where leaders have to step up and say, who in each one of these departments will collectively contribute to the company's GRC program, instead of looking at this in isolation.
Yeah, some great points there. I think Will mentioned SOC 2 compliant. You also hear HIPAA certified sometimes. And we have to realize when we're experiencing marketing, because people and businesses want to buy finality. It's like if you're going to buy a house and you're like, oh, how's the HVAC system holding up? And they're like, we got an HVAC report. Or if you go to the doctor's office and afterwards and your spouse says, how'd it go? You don't want to say, oh, I think it went well. Wouldn't it be cool if we could say, I got my health trophy today? So we have to realize when we're experiencing marketing, and then take a realistic approach for that. Do what we need to do what our business needs to do. But what I would say, how to enable cybersecurity to grow the business faster with more confidence, is to think of what's coming next. That doesn't mean you have to do it all at the same time, but if you're dealing with small businesses now, but next year you want to be dealing with like Fortune 50 companies, start thinking about the things that Fortune 50 companies ask for. That information's out there. That LLM you love, you don't want to put all the faith in it, but it can even tell you a lot of those things if you didn't know them now. Think about what's next, because that budget SOC 2 report that you got for $2,000, it might work with the really small companies, but if you send that to Chase Bank, they're going to laugh at you, and they're going to ask you really hard questions that if you thought a little bit ahead, you would have known those questions. They're never going to ask you to land a rocket on the moon. So just have some common sense and think ahead a little bit. But we are getting close to the end here. So I want to say thanks so much to Will for joining us today. Do you have any closing remarks for the audience, and where can they find you?
Closing remarks. Yeah. Take a little bit of time in that planning and that assessing. I know everybody wants to hurry up and get to the do, but don't skimp. All of that, and that kind of goes with everything in technology in general, but understanding the programs, the processes, all that. It will more than 10 times more, pay off for itself when you get to the actual doing. Asset visibility, data flow diagrams, all that stuff, risk appetite, having a roadmap, have a plan, right? That really spend the time on the plan. Don't just jump into doing it. As far as we can find me, so LinkedIn, I post every day, Wil Klu. You can DM me there. Don't have to wait for my connection. I love the connections, don't get me wrong, but there's thousands of them and I don't always get through them all. So if you have something that you want to talk to me about, send me a message. That's why the profile's set up the way it is. I also have a podcast on Keyboard Samurai on YouTube, and I do some other videos on there as well. And you can get the podcast on Spotify and Apple, all that stuff. Blogs are on our company page on viLogics, viLogics.com. And I have a newsletter and outreach form on wilklu.me. So that's like my little, if you need services, advisory, or book me for speaking, anything like that, that's where you can go. So hopefully this has been great. I really enjoyed it. I'm glad to be chatting with other like-minded individuals like Karina here.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to kind of close on a personal note. Please reduce your kids' digital footprint. Let them decide how much of a signature they want to have online. If you could avoid posting pictures and videos of your kids online, it would really do a lot to help save their identity for when they're ready to release it as they get a little bit older. So I'm on LinkedIn, not as much as I should be. Definitely am reachable though on LinkedIn. Mike?
Yeah. No, thanks so much to both of you. I am on LinkedIn, probably more than I should be. So feel free to reach out on there anytime. Early next week, either Monday or Tuesday, we're going to be posting about next month's event, and it's really exciting. It's going to be interesting. Hopefully, like you found this one interesting. Thanks so much for joining us, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.